I am just so honored to accept this award. Okay, so there's no award, but while I'm here, I might as well introduce the show. My name is Natasha Reifenberg, and I am a senior and executive producer for this year's Show Some Skin themed Try Us. This year's show in particular has been centered on expanding our capacity for empathy. In our campus-wide call for stories in September, we asked, what would happen if we spoke and listened in a way that reflected our interconnectedness, where one voice could avalanche into a snowball that envelops us all? In November, our storyboard team spent hours poring over all these stories submitted to us. No decision was easy. And our only regret today is that the show cannot last for 7 hours. For you to hear these many incredible, heart-tugging stories, we had to leave out due to time constraints. In December, we were blown away by the talent of the many students who auditioned, many with no prior theater experience, to deliver these stories in the actual production. Again, no decision was easy. For the last 2 months, our production team and cast have been working tirelessly to do justice to these monologues that have so truthfully tried us. We have held 4-hour rehearsals every Saturday and Sunday since school started, and these stories will forever leave a mark on our actors. Show Some Skin is an anonymous monologue production. We never know who wrote what story, and we couldn't even tell you if we wanted to. Thank you, Google Forms. The anonymity aspect is central to the show's unique capacity to give voice to stories that would otherwise likely remain unspoken. It will not only challenge you, the audience, to reinterpret how you interact with people in your own community, as this could be the story of your roommate or the person you sit next to in class every day. But it also challenges the actor to step into a lived experience that is not their own. I am emphasizing this point so heavily because last year, apparently this point was not made sufficiently clear. I had several audience members make remarks after the performance such as, "Wow, I had no idea he was gay. What a cool way to come out." That was not the case. I would like to reiterate that the stories you hear tonight are not those of the actors, but those submitted anonymously in September through our campus-wide call for stories. This was a record year for us. A record number of submissions, over 100, a record number of people auditioning, over 75, and a record sellout time. The 3 shows were sold out in under a couple hours. And while we are so incredibly proud of how much the show has grown in the last year and humbled by the extraordinary demand, hopefully not too many of you are here just for Moreau extra credit, we are even more motivated to continue this work by what we cannot necessarily quantify: the change on our campus, the willingness to be vulnerable, the personal transformations, the tears, the laughter, and an increased awareness of our interconnectedness. If we truly are all to walk together, to all be Notre Dame, we must seek out those who seem most distant and listen to their stories. Now, a few housekeeping items. Please join us in the lobby for an after-show reception. Please fill out the survey and keep an eye out for the first ever South Bend Civic Theater Show, April 7th, incorporating monologues written by Adams High School students on being undocumented. And please, please hold your applause until the end of the show. Believe me, I know how incredible these performances are, but the applause can really slow down the show significantly. My gratitude for what the show has done for myself and my peers is immeasurable. And my experience at Notre Dame would be very, very different if it weren't for Show Some Skin. But I would like to try, at the very least, to think of a couple people in particular. to Eric Ways.
I'm right here, Tosh.
Eric Ways, our fearless director, who has, thank you. Thank you for being my creative partner, for answering my calls day and night. I am so in awe of your vision. To our actors, thank you for your willingness to dive beneath the surface, to give so much of yourself to this show. To my wonderful production team, especially Trevor Carter, my perfect Myers-Briggs compliment. He's an introvert. Thank you for that. Thank you for the hours you have poured into this production, particularly via tedious Excel sheets, Google Docs, and emails. To our incredible, incredible faculty advisors, Nicole McLaughlin and Cecilia Lucero, who have given us the space and support to be student leaders. And above all, to our brave anonymous writers, thank you for trusting us. Without your willingness to lay out such an intimate part of yourself for what you know you would never get any recognition or credit for, this show would not be possible. And I'd like to conclude with a quote by the 13th century poet Rumi. Our ideas out beyond ideas of wrongdoing, right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. I personally like to think that in this field, there are two people. One, a storyteller, and the other, a generous and open listener. They don't know each other, but the word stranger doesn't make any sense. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being an open listener. I hope you love this show as much as I do.
If we imagine that others had the capacity to empathize with us, then I probably will lose fewer strands of hair due to worry onto my carpet. Let me explain. Although it's been a couple of years, I still carefully mold my accent to sound like an authentic, standardized American. Freshman year, I'd have bouts where I'd fear that people would find me to be a phony. Not a true American yet by my accent, and when that thought would terrorize my mind, my words would tumble and jumble all over one another. Today, my tongue doesn't freeze in the face of English anymore when I stress, thankfully, a feat I take great relish in. If we imagine that others had the capacity to empathize with us, then I probably would confide more in my few friends whom I hold quite dear. How terrified I was last year when my mom told me she was going to start studying part-time. And how terrified I was that she might be disrespected or jeered at because unlike me, who had at least learned English, albeit in a foreign country, she self-taught herself. Because unlike the cynical me, she still had faith and optimism in people's humanity that I was so certain American society would squish, terrified. Because a small part of me was scared to death that she might become the unsuspecting victim of a hate crime in today's America. If we imagine that others had the capacity to empathize with us, then I wouldn't hesitate to say that I stay here on breaks because campus and housing here is so much more luxurious than what's waiting for me back home. If we imagine that others had the capacity to empathize with us, then I wouldn't think that my history with boys has been so dismal, at least to some extent because of my skin color. I'm not saying that's the only reason. It could be because I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, wealthy enough, or I'm just not their type, but that's what gets me. Is their type just white, or black or Hispanic? To what extent does skin color play into who someone is attracted towards, and will that factor continue to work against me? I would do anything to silence those nagging thoughts like, he probably won't even bother getting to know you because your name's too hard, weird, interesting, ethnic, different. He might not want to get to know you because you're culturally different and he'll choose not to relate. And then, on the off chance that he is attracted to me, it's because I'm black and he has a fetish for it. With past experiences like these, can you blame a girl for not wanting to and yet having never felt a man's attention, for not wanting to keep trying? If we imagine that others had the capacity to empathize with us, then I would step out of this audience and go from someone whose actions are shaped in reaction to the main actors on stage and conformity with those around her, to someone who felt like she could alter her script if she didn't like it. If others could truly empathize with no judgment, then maybe I'd be more honest with them and with myself. And maybe then the story would not be that of a stranger, but would instead have my hard, weird, interesting, ethnic, different, and 9 times out of 10 mispronounced name attached to it.
Okay, imagine you're on a plane, you're with a big group of people, and you're all scattered throughout. You're in the last row, and there isn't much leg room, but you're so excited that you just brush it off. It's a fun trip, and nothing like leg room should ruin it. Imagine the men sitting next to you are chatting and chuckling in Polish. No, German. No, Polish. They said hello to you when you first sat down, but now they're ignoring you. The plane takes off, you slip in your earbuds, and watch an in-flight movie. It's an old comedy with that one actor, but it's not funny, so you just fall asleep. Imagine you wake with a start because you're so acutely aware of fingertips tickling the outside of your thighs. You look accusatorily at the man sitting next to you. His eyes are closed. His hand must have fallen into your seat by mistake. These seats are pretty small. You nudge his hand back to his seat and fall back into sleep. Wait. But imagine you wake up again and you feel his hands reaching in between your legs. You look over at him, expecting him to be ashamed and retract. He stares back at you, sneering at you. This can't be real. But then you feel him trying to slither his hands into your leggings, brushing the lace. No! You choke out, tugging at his wrist, trying to get your wits about you. You're just a child, less than half his age. He has to understand that you do not consent. But his eyes are lustful, and this is not okay. Everybody says respect your elders, but he keeps insisting, and your head is reeling. The plane is asleep, oblivious to your struggle. Imagine you keep pushing him off and he keeps pushing forward and you're trying to communicate that this is far from okay, but even if the spoken words are different, even if he doesn't speak English, your desperation means no in every single language. His hand won't stop and the tears are streaming. You're trying to cry, but you can't find the sound. Imagine a boy across the aisle catches your attention, motioning to the back of the plane. You muster your courage, wriggle out of your seat, escaping the old man's grasp. The boy English is broken, but he asks if you're okay. No, you reply without further questions. The boy goes back to his seat, grabs his bag, and sits down next to the old man. He hands your backpack, and motions you to sit next to his family. He could have done nothing. He could have ignored you, but he actively saved you from your real-life nightmare. You mouth thank you. Imagine hours later and 6 time zones ahead, the plane lands. You get off the plane, avoid an eye contact with your assailant. You reunite with your friends and listen as they chatter excitedly. In line to get a stamp on your passport, a memento of the journey. You see him. He sneers at you, blows you a kiss, then disappears in the crowd of travelers. You feel angry. You feel vulnerable. You feel nauseous. But you repress it. It's a fun trip, and nothing so silly should ruin it. Later, you travel back home, and still you repress it. It's an exciting trip, and nothing so trivial should ruin the memory. You repress it because you're a good girl, because you don't want them to see you differently. Because how would you tell your parents? You repress it.
Sometimes I feel I don't belong at this university because of my status as a low-income student. Not a week goes by where I don't hear people complaining about financial aid awards given to minorities or how easy the poor have it here. Yes, it's true. Notre Dame has been very generous, and I will graduate debt-free. That doesn't mean I don't struggle financially in school. You see, while I don't have to worry about paying for school or dorms or a meal plan, I have to worry about paying for anything else. On top of being a full-time student, I work 20 hours a week at a campus job and another 10 to 15 at a side job. This money I work for is the only money I'll have to spend on necessities or activities. What is being poor at Notre Dame like? I can share with you some of my financial worries. I drive a 2007 car that's needed servicing for 3 months now. On top of that, the car needs a $1,200 repair. Otherwise, the engine might combust, but all I can say to the guy at the CarX is, maybe next time. I haven't had a full tank of gas at any point here, and I go out of my way to give people rides over breaks so that they help me with gas. On campus, I rewear shirts and pants as much as possible to avoid doing laundry more than once a month. I am self-conscious that my friends will recognize my wardrobe from how often I wear things, but I don't have the money to spend nearly $10 on clean clothes. When will Notre Dame acknowledge me and let me use flex points for laundry? Or, better yet, why can't I have free access like our brothers and sisters across the road? I have to buy all my hygiene and cleaning supplies at the Huddle, because there I can use flex points instead of real money. However, I am spending 3 to 5 times as much as my dorm mates who buy all their items at a real store. They spend $10. I spend $35. When my friends ask me to go out and celebrate a birthday or simply go out, I have to say no because I've had a long weekend. I'm tired. I want to go, but spending $15 minimum on a night out just simply doesn't fit in my budget. I do most of my winter shopping at a thrift store because coats and boots are expensive. Where you shop for costumes, I shop for warmth. And at the end of the year, when you throw out your perfectly good pillows and box fans and furniture because you simply have no use for them over the summer, I pick it up and I keep it because it's better than my stuff. My room is a collection of your discarded items. Notre Dame is structurally made for rich people, and students are blind to this fact. I hope now you see us living in poverty on this campus. Notre Dame must be better, and it must validate these issues by making life here more accessible to all.
I heard that there is some kind of lesbian underground out there at ND. Could you help a sister out? What? I'm tired of feeling so alone.
American, Southerner, black, smart, athletic, kind, light skin, nerd, weird, white girl, Oreo, a teacher's pet, a minority, a house nigga, an inevitable statistic. At some point throughout my 18 years of living, I have been called each of these things multiple times. So, what am I? Identity has always been a weird thing for me. In kindergarten, I was the only black kid in my class. However, I was young and I had no real concept of race. My classmates were just my classmates. I saw no difference between us. One class, I was asked why I didn't have a black name. And instantly I was confused, but me being the age I was, I thought nothing of it. Right before first grade, Hurricane Katrina hit and destroyed the city I was raised in, New Orleans. When my family got back, my mom decided to homeschool my sister and I absolutely loved it. I discovered my love for Legos and Star Wars and comic books, and most important to me, my love for tennis. I was able to grow as a person without society blocking or influencing any aspect of my life. I was me, living in an environment where being me was expected and encouraged. Homeschooling lasted for 5 strong years until my parents decided to send me to St. Augustine High School, an all-black female institution. My parents had thrown me into the deep end of the pool. Instantly, I could tell that something was wrong. I was nothing like these kids, and the only time anyone ever made eye contact with me was through the sides of their eyes. And I would always hear them. Weirdo. Oreo. Dork. School shooter. Because I was given the chance to develop as a person without guidelines, I was the outcast. 6th through 8th grade were tough years. I had many friends come and go, and thankfully I found those who stuck by my side and accepted and encouraged me for who I was. In terms of my school life, I had overcome the ridicule to an extent. I was still the white girl of the school, but it was more of a joke. However, it still put a heavy weight over my shoulders. Just because I was intelligent, got along with my teachers, and played a sport that wasn't socially accepted, I was viewed differently. Come senior year, I had become numb to the teasing and the name-calling. In a way, I had accepted the fact that I was the white girl and embraced it. I mean, if being the best version of myself and doing what I loved meant I was the white girl, then so be it. I was a white girl. Then graduation came. a fresh start. I was going to a predominantly white institution where I had been subconsciously trained that I'd fit in more. But that was far from the case. I entered campus expecting to have the easiest transition and the easiest time talking and relating to a majority of the campus. And all of our conversations started out great, but there was always this one question that put up this huge barrier stopping the conversation and any ability to genuinely interact with anyone. So, what sport do you play? And you can just see on their faces the instant disinterest in me. You see, I'm not the key to a football or basketball championship. I am of no value to them. I'm just a nigga from New Orleans. All my life, I longed to be a black girl in high school, but I wasn't black enough for them. My own race took that from me. And now I'm not even the white girl that was shunned in my high school. So, if I'm not black enough, or white enough, what am I?
So, how do you tolerate all the pro-lifers on campus?
His question took me aback. What did he mean, how do I tolerate the pro-lifers? I'm one of them. Then I realized he didn't know. He boxed me into the social justice Catholic and out of the pro-life Catholic. He and I first met at the Catholic Workers' House downtown, where we shared a moving conversation about a recently incarcerated acquaintance and discussed restorative justice over a potluck meal. We saw each other again at the campus rally in support of DACA students, which I attended with a dear friend of mine who's secretly undocumented and frightened for her future. The third time I talked to him was at a rally for workers' rights. We were protesting wage theft and demanding a living wage for all workers. Somehow, based on these 3 encounters, this man concluded I couldn't possibly be pro-life. Why? Was it my affirmation of the dignity of the imprisoned? Was it the welcome that I extended to immigrants? Was it my conviction that all people have a right to decent work and to provide for their families with dignity? How are any of these things in conflict with supporting a culture of life? I believe that everyone is created in the image of God. Those that are imprisoned and those that are illiterate. The low-wage worker and the immigrant. The sex worker and my gender non-conforming friends and, yes, the unborn. I understand why the false dichotomy between pro-life and social justice has emerged. Staunchly pro-life Catholics often fall short of the challenge of Catholic social teaching, why social justice Catholics sometimes reject the authority of the church. But the dichotomy between these groups of Catholics isn't itself Catholic. It's a false dichotomy. You see, pro-life means fighting for social justice, and social justice only makes sense if it's pro-life. If you want to know the truth of the Catholic Church, take a look at her great saints, at the beautiful and powerful witness of Dorothy Day and Mother Teresa. Hell, if you want to know the truth of the Catholic Church, take a look at her founder, Jesus Christ. So how do I tolerate pro-lifers on campus? I join with them in serving my most vulnerable brothers and sisters.
No, I am not Australian. I'm not Canadian either. And I'm not being rude, these aren't headphones. I am deaf. I am hard of hearing. These things in my ears, they're called hearing aids. I don't want your apologies. Don't say, oh, I'm so sorry, or I'll pray for you. I'm not dying. It's death not death. Maybe you need some hearing aids to help you figure that out. My life is the same as yours. Don't tell me I'm an inspiration because I managed to wake up today despite my condition. I have worked hard to get here, and don't tell me it's because of my ears. There's more to me than the hearing aids behind my ears. You can see that they're there, but there's so much more that you don't see of them. The story of the person that is behind them. You don't see the years and years of speech therapy, missing recess and gym to sit in the school basement saying the same words on repeat. You don't see the scars behind the hearing aids from all the surgeries on my ears, surgeries that pulled me out of school and kept me from running around the playground. You don't see the tears that I shed as I lost friend after friend because I couldn't hear them. You didn't see the list that your friend wrote of 100 different ways to tell me to shut up because I was too loud. You don't know the feeling of sitting in class terrified that you'll miss assignments and key material for the exam because you can't hear it. You don't know the isolation that exists when your hearing aid breaks and you are on your own. You don't know the relief that a knife across your skin can bring when your brain is so full of things that people don't know. You don't see the bullying and the isolation. You don't see the scars and the pain. You don't see the tears that stain my books. All you see is the hearing aids and not the story behind them. I am not an inspiration. I am not poor dear. I have worked to get here. I deserve it just as much as you do. Don't say you are sorry. Look me in the eye and say, hi.
I guess you could call me an attention seeker, or a freak of nature, or a burden, or a biological improbability, a mistake, a misguided teenager, or my personal favorite, a cross-dressing liberal hippie. I personally call myself a man, but to each their own. Sorry, let me take a step back. I realize that my introduction was drenched in sarcasm, and I probably sound bitter. Though, please don't let that taint your judgment of me. Honestly, I can understand why some people have such negative reactions when they first see me. I truly can, because I know that I'm a bit, well, weird. Not in like the fun, quirky way either. You see, I am a man, but I was born female. I'm transgender. And yeah, that's a bit weird. Now, it would take too long for me to go over everything about what being transgender means to me, so perhaps I can dispel some of the misconceptions, some of the weirdness about who I am. First off, I am not an attention seeker. Perhaps that seems ironic as I announce that to an entire audience. But it's the truth. My goal in life is not to stand out. No, it's quite the opposite. My goal is to blend in, to disappear. My goal is to walk into a store one day and have the cashier call me sir, because that's what he calls everyone else, isn't it? My goal is to walk into a classroom and not have a single student give me the stare. The something seems off about you stare, the you look like a queer stare. My goal is to see my relatives over Thanksgiving or Christmas and go one season without them asking if I'm still going through my tranny phase. Because for once, I would rather have them ask me about how school was going, or how big I've gotten since they last saw me, or how they actually care about me because they're my own family. And honestly, I don't think they know a single thing about me besides that I'm a girl who wears boy clothes. But I haven't been able to reach my goal yet. because I'm transgender. And my transness attracts too much attention. I really wish it didn't. Second off, I'm not a freak or a burden or a mistake. Believe it or not, I'm actually just a human being. And like every other human being in this room, I have wants and needs and dreams and ambitions. And perhaps my wants or dreams differ from other people's, but that doesn't make them any less human. It doesn't make me yet another inconvenience for people to deal with, or yet another poor soul for people to toss their pity at. Like, I want to grow a beard and be taller and have a flat chest along with everything else males have. I want to be a husband someday, maybe a dad later on. My ambitions are to one day medically transition so that I can finally look in a mirror and see a face that I truly recognize as my own. And to legally change my name so I can finally have a conversation with someone and feel like I'm living my own life. My needs consist of needing to feel like there's somebody in this world that actually cares about me. Doesn't everybody need that? Third off, I'm not a cross-dressing liberal hippie. Out of all the things I've said so far, this may come as the most surprising to some of you, but just to clarify, I am not planning on spending thousands of dollars on hormones, therapy, and surgeries simply for the sake of a political statement. My identity is not political. It's not part of some progressive agenda, nor is it part of some grand conspiracy to persuade everybody into becoming transgender. Being transgender isn't a choice, nor is it a social statement. My identity is just that, mine. And to attempt to generalize the entire transgender community into belonging to one political ideology or social movement or background only serves to ignore the amazing complexity that exists within the transgender community. Trust me, I know trans people of every race, religion, political ideology, background, and ability. Don't let people fool you into thinking that's not true. And as one final note, I'm not just a transgender man. I believe the worst and most harmful misconception about the transgender community is that our gender identity is the only interesting thing about us. And let me tell you, that's not even close to being true. Yeah, I'm a man who was born female. That's pretty weird. But that's just one part of who I am. Talk to me about Disney or musicals, or baking, or Stranger Things, or Notre Dame football, or how cool snakes are. Or how I continue to wear sweaters in 70-degree weather. Honestly, ask me about anything. You may find that I'm a lot more approachable than you originally thought. Because, in the end, I'm just an ordinary man.
I fell in love with him all over the world. We had a thing right before we went abroad, but because we knew that we would be in different countries in little over a month, we decided to keep things casual. That didn't last. Before I knew it, we were standing together on the cliffs in Ireland and traveling to Italy to visit my family and stumbling into a cafe for tapas at 4 a.m. in Spain. He rubbed my back when I got carsick on the bus ride to the cliffs of Moher, and took my glasses off when I fell asleep on his shoulder on the ride to Italy's countryside, and held my hand yet fell with me anyway, laughing into the slick brick streets of Madrid after a downpour. He was perfect, I thought. And we kept saying it was only a matter of time before we were back in the States, and it was a quick walk to and from our dorms instead of a flight, and a good night and see you tomorrow instead of a tearful hug at customs. We counted down the days until we got back to the States. I should have stopped counting. You see, he would get upset when he drank, yelling at me and only knowing to stop once I had reached the point of tears. Sometimes he didn't stop. I cried too much, he said. It had no effect on him anymore. And as I stared at him through hot tears that blurred my vision, I wondered what I could have done to make another person so angry. Questioning my existence when I started to believe him when he said that I made his life miserable. And then the clouds parted. I woke up the next morning with him holding me, sobbing, apologizing profusely. He said that it would never happen again, and he didn't know what was wrong with him, and he would get help. But it continued. Things escalated. He would yell at me at parties, throw food at me in public, storming out and leaving people staring. Texted me that he hated me, and then following up minutes later saying he didn't mean it. And when I got back late from a friend's house one night, he was so angry that I grew scared and locked myself in the bathroom, only knowing to come out when the banging on the other side of the door had subsided, which signaled that he had fallen asleep. And the apologies came rolling in the next day. He promised that things would be fine, and for a while they were. He would justify it by saying that I had deserved it at the time, and if I hadn't done X or Y, it wouldn't have happened, and he smirked at the thought of this being an abusive relationship. He had never hit me. And how do you even prove emotional abuse? How do you prove a bruise I could make sense of? Someone I love telling me I was worthless didn't make any sense. The months rolled by, a blend of normalcy and nightmares. I wore my contacts. No, I wore my glasses several days in a row because my eyes were so swollen and sore from crying that I couldn't get my contacts in. There were days I couldn't eat because the knot in my stomach kept me full. And I slept all the time because it was my only remedy from my perpetual migraine. I saw the world with him, and in a few months, he took it away from me. I lost sight of those cliffs, those cities, those brick-lined streets, and grew trapped in an echo chamber of his words that began to feel less like petty insults and more like the truth. It's been months since our breakup. His words haven't gone away, but with each passing day, their stamp on my mind fades just a little more. One day I will go back to those cliffs and those cities and those brick-lined streets. I will re-see everything without the filter of a whirlwind relationship that now feels as far away as the locations that fueled it. I want to see the world. And this time, when I look back to remember it, I won't see him.
You're a girl, so act like one. I am a girl, just so you know. Yet I've heard this phrase over and over. From all sides of my life, these words have been thrown at me, except one place. The lights are dimmed, the air feels condensed around me. The tiled floor squeaks as I slide across it, right, left, in, out. The heavy bag slowly sways back and forth, an offer. The blue canvas of the ring shines ready for me whenever I choose to step between the ropes. The mirror invites me to look, presenting me with stark corrections that hold no tension or animosity. The heavy bag doesn't order me to wear makeup. It doesn't suggest I dress like a girl. My gloves won't tell me not to eat ice cream. As I string the laces of my shoes, it won't tell me that my haircut looks dykey. The speed bag won't comment that I'm too muscular. Instead, what these things give me are words. My gloves close around my hand, feel the rough skin of my palm tenderly caress my sprained wrist and become one with the edges of my knuckles, forming the word resilient. The heavy bag moves with me as I punch it over and over. It absorbs each of my punches, analyzing the curves of my biceps and the mountains of my triceps. Each punch into the leather pounds out the word strong. As I string the laces of my shoes, tightening them, they feel the sore spot where I broke my foot. They do all they can to protect my feet as I bounce back and forth, sliding across the floor, revealing the word graceful. Lastly, I look in the mirror. I let my eyes see myself. As they graze over each muscle, I remember the concussions, the sprains, the twists, and the breaks. As I finally let my eyes meet themselves in the mirror, I breathe out the word boxer. These words and so many more run through my head. Each punch hits with words like smart, dedicated, powerful, invincible. The words that don't come to mind are gay, different, outsider. In the ring, I am not a lesbian. I am not different. I'm not even a girl. I am a boxer. You're a girl, so act like one. I've heard these words spoken in confusion, stated in disappointment, screamed in frustration. Now they wash over me like rain on flower petals. They don't touch me. The only things I feel are the cloth of my wraps, the air that blows in my face as the speed bag chimes back and forth like a bell, and the pressure of the heavy bag against my glove. I am one with myself. I am a girl second. I am a boxer first.
Quotes from our dear president, Father Jenkins. Number 1. That is Notre Dame. Either we walk together in mutual support, or we do not walk at all. Either we are all Notre Dame, or none of us are. Number 2. I think that it would be wrong for Notre Dame to say, we want to be everything to everybody. Notre Dame is for everybody. It's not. Well, which is it, Father Jenkins? Am I Notre Dame or am I not? Are you walking alongside me, or was I mistaken in choosing to call this place my home?
The first time you spread your legs for a woman, it will feel like betrayal. Oral sex will taste like forbidden fruit, the knowledge of good and evil and the certainty of your damnation wrapped up like dynamite between her thighs. Your purity engulfed in flames, collapsing quickly because, let's be honest, the foundation was never that strong to begin with. Ever since you were little, you had a suspicion that you were going to hell. Acting up in first communion class, counting tiles on the church ceiling, daydreaming about kissing girls instead of listening to the homily. Now you know what it is. Now you can put a label on the reason you hate yourself. You can act on your queerness without actually accepting it. You can taste the sweetness of another woman, but you'll make yourself throw up after. You can kiss her in those magical moments after midnight, wrapped in the silence of her bed sheets, but during the day you wear straightness like a perfume, something you spray on before you leave the house. When you walk past the rows of lockers, you can hear the words whispering past your ears, the rumors of who you are and what you do with her. You're sure they can read it on your skin or smell it in your hair, The words you let gently fall out of your mouth and enter her lips are on a billboard somewhere, broadcasting everywhere. The word clenches like a fist in your stomach, spat like acid out of the mouth of the girl in French class who wouldn't work with you on a project because you're, a lesbian. And the girl next to her ears clench up when she hears this. And she asks, "Are you?" And you answer, "Yeah," trying to sound casual about it, even though you can feel your heart pounding in your throat. And she just shrugs and says, "Oh, I never knew that." Me either, but goddamn if I don't know it now. Goddamn if my heart doesn't flutter when the curve of my girlfriend's soft pink lips press against mine. Goddamn you if you think I shouldn't be able to walk across campus holding my girlfriend's hand. Goddamn you for staring. Fuck off. You never seen two people in love before? You gotta love the eyes that linger, searching desperately past our intertwined fingers and love-struck eyes for some sign that maybe we're just really good friends. or even worse, the guys who smirk and laugh at each other when they see her arms around my waist on the dance floor. Like, what's the logic in that? We're obviously gay, so. Or the pursed lips and disapproving glances from families visiting campus. The ones who pull their children closer and glare at us for having the audacity to be publicly in love. And the ones who would see a straight couple doing the exact same thing and just smile wistfully at their kids, telling them, "You'll understand when you get older." The alumni who return to campus and act personally offended when they see us holding hands. When did they start letting you in? I came out to myself when I was 14. I'm 21 now. I've lived a third of my life pretending not to notice the stares. You think doing a double take when I kiss my girlfriend is gonna stop me from kissing her? Do you really? Do you think looking at me with disgust when I brush my lips against my girlfriend's cheeks is gonna make me ashamed? Honey, I used to live ashamed. I used to let the shame eat me up inside. I used to let it devour me. Shame used to live inside my bloodstream, but it doesn't anymore. So if you think you're gonna make me ashamed by staring at me and my girlfriend when we're out in public, then goddamn you.
Notre Dame worships two supreme beings, God and football. The first is a man, the second a sport that's become the greatest money-making force in the entire university, plastered week after week on TV screens across the country. But it's also one of the only sports that will never represent women. Women can lead in basketball, we can lead in gymnastics or soccer, but in football, we won't ever lead because we won't ever play. Football, in God's image and likeness, is a man. Believe me when I say it is hard to be a woman. It's hard to go to Buffalo Wild Wings and be surrounded by TV screens glorifying the acts of men. To see bull riders dressed as cowboys walk alongside women wearing nearly nothing. It's hard to enjoy my wings when the screen in front of me is featuring ultimate fighters flexing their muscles in front of a wall of women in bikinis. On a backdrop to remove your shirt to. It's hard being a woman when you know the girl at the end of the hall thinks it's normal for a guy she just met to be calling and texting her nonstop. It's hard to go into my guy friend's dorm room and see a woman's ass covering most of the wall. It's hard when you start to wonder if your body will ever compare to what you see online and in magazines. It is especially hard if you're a woman of color, when you realize the students who speak the least in your class are you and the other brown girl sitting side by side in a room filled with white. It's even harder when you are the only woman of color and you lose track of the number of times you've been cut off. It is even harder when you realize your voice could matter less, but the color of your skin means it will never matter at all. It is hard to be a woman, but it is especially hard at this university, where my lack of access to birth control is my problem, where wanting complete control and autonomy of my body is seen as immoral, and where a woman, no matter how capable she may be, will never have the chance to call herself the president of this university. At this university, tradition holds women captive. At this university, it is plainly obvious to me that God is a man. God is a man because my grandmother's lack of a high school education was seen as a commonality. He is a man because in the 228 years since the office has been established, not a single woman has been elected president. God is a man because every time a man or a woman stares at the hair on my legs with disgust in their eyes, I feel an overwhelming sense of shame towards my body because the world has twisted something as natural as body hair into a sign of uncleanliness when it's displayed on my skin. God will never be a woman when I find myself thinking twice when I look into a mirror, afraid that what I'm wearing will entice a man to stare at my chest for too long or put his hands in places I never asked him to. It's happened before. It'll probably happen again. God is a man because it takes accusations of sexual assault and rape from more than 50 women to oust a prominent Hollywood figure from his position of power. In the world that we live in, God will never be a woman because men walk on water while women weep at their feet.
Some realities are harder than others, and I have reason to believe mine is. To be an immigrant, or not even. Despite my 10+ years in this country, I have no right to make it mine. So how does it feel to cringe with every intern listing, job description, with the words, U.S. citizens only? To wait for the tears to come as every opportunity is ripped out of my hands. To know my very own sister is afforded every opportunity in this country, and yet I am not. Because I was born too soon and too far away. To feel so desperate to stay that you base every decision on that goal. To know how small that makes you.
I knew I was different after 2nd grade. We got dropped off by the bus. We dragged our tired bodies into his house and sat down at his marble kitchen island. Like always, his mom made us chicken tenders. Sitting in his kitchen, eating our chicken tenders, and waiting to get driven to karate practice. A typical day with my friend, my best friend. I've known Jeremy since kindergarten. We told each other everything. Who we disliked, what girls we liked and how to get them to like us back, what plans we had and what ideas buzzed in our imagination. We did everything together. We would run up and down my cul-de-sac and have Nerf gun fights, hide behind trees, pop out, shoot each other. We would swim at his country club, and once we became little wet prunes, we would get out, get ice cream, and bake in the sun. We would stay up until 2 a.m. playing Pokemon and fall asleep with the Game Boy still clutched in our hands. We even used to pee together. During times when we both had to use the bathroom, we would go together and cross streams. We thought it was more efficient that way. And why not? That was nearly 10 years ago, and I still remember because he was my best fucking friend. He was there for me. He was there to run up and down my street and shoot me, to talk about the girls I liked, and to strategize how to get them to like me back. He was there for me. That's why it felt like getting shot by a real gun when one day he told me as we were sitting at his Marble Kitchen Island eating chicken tenders, "My brother and sister think it's weird that my best friend is Asian." I knew I looked different in 6th grade. Kids are born with a clean slate. Little white canvases just waiting to be painted by the world. You see, before children even begin to store their memories, they get their colors. They get a little red from their dad, a little blue from their mom. They get colors from the friends they hang out with and the schools they go to. Aunts and uncles put a splash here and a brush stroke there. They formulate their own colors. Before long, every child has a unique display of layers of colors. Most of these are beautiful. Beautiful shades of evergreen, hot red, royal purple, vibrant hues of orange, and peaceful strokes of ocean blue. But not all these colors are beautiful. No. Every canvas has marks of shit brown or spotty dirty green, gross colors. Colors that we keep hidden. Colors we don't show other people. You see, it was these kinds of colors that came out during play dates and lunch breaks. These colors that got splattered onto playgrounds and classrooms. These colors that got splattered right onto my canvas. I knew I was hot in high school. I mean, at the dinner table, my mom would always rhetorically ask, "How is it that I have such beautiful children?" But nobody ever believes their mothers when it comes to this kind of thing. They're the biggest liars when it comes to their own. But in middle school, girls wouldn't associate themselves with me. At lunch, I'd be sitting with my boys, and if a girl dared to come up to talk to one of my friends, I'd have to bud myself into their conversation, desperate for attention from the opposite gender. That was in middle school. In high school, I realized how to talk to them. I realized how to smile, to look confused, to ask questions. I learned how to raise my eyebrows or lean in when she said something interesting, to tease her, to make her laugh. I had a girlfriend in high school. I never thought any girl would date me, especially not for 3 years. But lo and behold, I had a girlfriend. I also made a lot more female friends while I was dating my girlfriend. They knew I had somebody, so they weren't afraid to be straight up with me. If they were drunk at a party and had enough confidence to speak their minds, they'd come up to me. They'd come, usually with a beer in hand, and say something like, "You're hot for an Asian," or "You're a really good-looking Asian," or "I usually don't find Asian guys attractive, but you're the exception." Usually I would just smirk and say, "Thank you." They meant well. After all, they were complimenting me, right? And at this point, I've become accustomed to it, immersed in it. It's expected at this point. It's painted on the dips near my eyes, the bridge of my nose, all the way down to the balls of my feet. It's painted on my skin, and it's nice to finally take off my clothes.
One could almost hear the morning dew moving lethargically along the tips of the green leaves on this crisp autumn day. the universe was aligned to my satisfaction as I took a bite of my bagel with a smear of cream cheese. It was Sunday morning, and I was sitting on the porch with my family, watching nature harmoniously working her symphony into a crescendo, with all living things, human and otherwise, participating in this feast of the senses. Joggers passing by waving hello, birds making their presence known with trills, geraniums unabashedly declaring their crimson, all perfectly coordinated on this morning to make me feel alive. This rhapsodic ecstasy was interrupted by my mother's voice, asking how my college essay was progressing. A moment of fear crept into this idyllic morning, one that had been a regular visitor all those times, sitting in front of my computer screen, staring at the dreaded blank page. It's not that I have nothing to say, nor is it the unspoken urge to write with the intent to impress the admissions committee. It's about writing with integrity and not seeming as a young, over-idealistic college candidate. I told my mother that my essay was almost completed, and I looked around me. This house, where my journey began in the corners of a forgotten balcony, on evenings filled with honeysuckle aromas and a submerged darkness, penetrated by successive falling stars and flickers of existentialism, was home. The darkness and sparks are not merely metaphorical tropes of an ambitious, if somewhat naive, writer. The shadows and sparks are my life as it has unfolded for the past 17 years. I am an only child, and my parents have lavished me with love and attention. They also had a few secrets, which eventually shook me to my very foundation. I did not know if the lies were more painful than the truth, but the challenges that I faced when I was told were emotionally devastating. To my horror, not only was I conceived by an untraditional method, but my parents' situation was one that still today is considered taboo by the majority of society. Young and impressionable, I had no patience for logic or for the indubitable reality that my parents loved me and had always protected me with the utmost care. I felt stigmatized and marginalized through no fault of my own. I wish my story were one of the fairy tale variety where tolerance and open-mindedness prevail and all challenges are discussed and resolved at the dinner table with a group hug. My story is one of struggle and challenge. In retrospect, I realized that I could not have overcome those struggles and challenges were it not for the love and patience of the same parents who had inadvertently hurt me so much. Later, I found spirituality and athletics as powerful outlets to help me cope with the emotional pain. I have conquered my fear of any perceived unorthodoxy concerning my family, and I've healed with the help of those who care about me. All that I can achieve is the horizon, because I am still on my journey to reach Ithaca. As the poet wrote, I do not hope to find my Ithaca full of riches, because along the way, Ithaca will give me the rich journey, a journey that will be full of struggles and wonders, one that will keep me humble and proud, and one that is still traveled. This is my hope, that when I reach my destination, I will look back at my path and see the faces of my parents beaming with pride. At that moment, that wondrous moment, I can finally tell the world that I owe it all to the love and dedication of my two moms.
Dear friend, you said, you're not like those people. You have to come to terms with the fact that most of them are terrorists trying to inflict violence. You're the exception. You can't tell me not to take it personally when you're being personal. You can't tell me not to be angry when you are inflicted by anger. You can't tell me that I'm the exception when you are not accepting. See, It blows your mind that I don't fit into that little box you created, those statistics you rated, these ideas you've been catered. See, to me, your ignorance was faded. Your idea of me as the exception has quite the misconception. See, you too are the exception of a people's tragedy. Need I remind you of white supremacy? It's quite the reality, inflicting violence on them, claiming it's charity. Don't you see this insanity? But hey, I'm just one of those. With an exception, though, if I keep up the good work, I might even earn a rose. I'm just a token neatly wrapped in a bow, always expecting to keep my identity on the low. We wouldn't want to make a show or step on anybody's toes. Truth is, I was raised by them and those. I keep saying see in hopes that you would open your eyes to surpass the lies. We're not that different, you and I. Or perhaps I'm the one who needs to open my eyes and see that your acceptance does not define me. Sincerely, a Muslim, Black, South African woman.
Hashtag me too.